So welcome to Slipper Camp. We're going to be talking about Pressbooks, making your own course packs, books, cool stuff, basically. And the queen of cool stuff is here, Erika Rydberg. So I'll toss it over to you.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, let me get up there to my presentation. And I am really grateful to have you all here today. I know we've reached the 4 o'clock hour, so I just wanted to extend my gratitude for everybody who's made it this far. It's been a great day when I've tuned in and out, and extra gratitude for the folks who are running the show here. I am not going to be looking at the chat as I present. That's a little complicated for me, but hopefully we'll get through this so that you can provide feedback at the end. So I'm going to start my presentation. So, Pressbooks, what is it? It's a tool for open publishing. As was announced, feel free to type your questions in the chat, and the hashtag again is PSU Open. I am a Twitter user myself, so I do appreciate any tweets that are sent out. A little bit more about it. It's an online publishing platform that creates digital books which are accessible through the web. Plymouth State University faculty and students have collaborated on several of these Pressbooks to develop free and open content that is tailored to their courses. You can use Pressbooks to publish, this is their list, textbooks, scholarly monographs, syllabi, fiction, nonfiction books, white papers, and more in multiple formats, including MOBI, EPUB, and PDF files. And we recently just launched an addition extension into our PDF system. So there is at least 3 different types of PDFs that you can produce. This is the ACE framework again, and where does Pressbooks fit into that? Well, I see it at the assignment level, kind of aligning with UDL baselines. There are some accessibility features built into Pressbooks. You can find out more about that at pressbooks.org. I think of it as another way to reach and work with students, and to also think about open as the other highlighted things express. So being able to share a material that's not just behind the LMS, but is out in the world. And also it could be used for high flex design. So not only can you have a Pressbook that's within your class, right, and that you use and it's accessible on the web, you can have it go offline. So you can make it a print. As Krista was talking about, you could even print it from lulu.com and make a physical book. So there's a lot of abilities with Pressbooks that makes it an ideal tool for the high flex design environment that we are talking about today and yesterday. There's a few different guides I always point to. This is in my documentation. It's in this slide. It's in the Pressbook I built, which is at the bottom there. The EDU guide and the guide are 2 really great tools that will guide you through step-by-step functionality of Pressbooks. Where do I find this? How do I do this? Those really have that information in there. So I like for folks to explore that on their own. Our own instance of Pressbooks, so we host our own sort of open source copy of the Pressbooks itself on campus, and that's at press.plymouth.edu. More on Pressbooks, as I said, pressbooks.org, if you want to look into some of those accessibility features or any sort of the open abilities of the tool. That's where you find that. And then I built a Pressbook specifically for this workshop. I'm just going to go ahead and open it just so you can see it. I'll go back into my presentation. So this is available for you to use even when I'm not available. So I built this for you all for today over last week, pretty much. It's a pretty short Pressbook, just to show you another way, an example of how to build a material that's not too long or in depth. It is in depth for this, I should say, but it's not the tome of anything with Pressbooks. All right. Oops, sorry, went back to the beginning. Let me get to where I am. All right, so why is this a valuable tool to use? Well, this is a quote from a Pressbook. When faculty use OERs, we aren't just saving a student money on textbooks, we are directly impacting that student's ability to enroll in, persist through, and successfully complete a course. In other words, we are directly impacting that student's ability to attend, succeed in, and graduate from college. And from a student perspective, I like to sort of throw it back. That's the academic faculty perspective. This is a meme page with Chris Pratt, full of Chris Pratt memes about textbook costs. And number 12 on this main page is you accept the fact that you're going to have to take out a second loan to pay for these books. And with Pressbooks, we're able to sort of shift a little bit. And you can find, as Kristen said, there's a lot of open source materials already out there built in Pressbooks or other systems. But if you're interested in building your own tools or making something a little bit more open for your class, this is a great tool to use. My personal thoughts from this last week. I had to order textbooks this summer, about 2 weeks ago, from Amazon. As my course information came out, I realized that due to shipping delays, I'm going to talk about this in this slide, I had to order my books right at that very moment of when I first got into my courses. And I have a tighter budget than I expected to have this summer. I also thought about the systems in place. So my reliance on deliveries and the pressure and burden placed upon employees like at companies like Amazon. For me, I had no choice. I had to order my textbooks, and do I have them today? No, I do not. I just checked on one, and last status was it's in California somewhere, and that was about 6 days ago. So I need my books for school, but what if there is an alternative? My situation can easily reflect that of other students, and I care about this a lot, even more now maybe than ever before. And I just pulled this from Twitter today. This is data from Statistics Canada, which does the Canadian census. They did a survey of about what post-secondary students are worried about in this current climate that we're living in. And you can see how much of this data that they surveyed was about cost. So they're concerned about using up their savings, difficulty paying for tuition, having to take on more student debt, inability to keep up with other bills and payments. And those are the other piece of this, especially right now, that I wanted to bring up in the context of COVID. And again, this is from Canada, where the cost of education is a little bit different. But I wanted to show this slide as the best sort of data set I could find on concerns of students in this world. So a little bit more back to the Pressbook side of things. Unlike a traditional textbook or an ebook, a Pressbook lives on the web. That means that authors can refine, remix, and adapt the book to fit the needs of their course. With this in mind, we have a Creative Commons guide, which I will open up. That was designed by a student, and it's linked from the press.plymouth.edu site. You can also go to creativecommons.org, as I'm sure you heard earlier, but this is something that one of our students built specifically, connected with our Pressbooks page, so that you can be guided a little bit if you're interested in using Creative Commons licensing. So with Pressbook, there's no need to worry about the content or if it will become stale or irrelevant over time. What remains relevant can stay, while content that shifts out of focus can be removed or replaced with emerging ideas and topics, which is what I really like about it. How do you request a Pressbook? Let's get back in here. So you basically send us an email to helpdesk@plymouth.edu. and that will allow us to get you set up. You do have to provide your title, and if you haven't had an account yet, we do have to get you set up with an account. And that's all it is. That's all it takes. If you have any students who are also, you're integrating this into a class framework, you'd want to provide their information as well. Generally, we do need the usernames of those students to get those accounts open, but as long as we have the names, we can get in there and find their information. So we do have a knowledge base article that's also linked from press.plymouth.edu. I'm just going to repeat that URL over and over again if you want to sort of dig in and find some more additional information about how to set it up, but it's in this slide here. Pressbooks has a 5-step guide to making a book, which making a book is longer than 5 steps, typically at least the writing time, but to them, this is how you get started. So you register for a Pressbook, you add your book information, you add an organized text, you choose your book design theme, we have a few in our system, and then you export your book in publish-ready file formats such as MOBI, EPUB, or PDF. And that's it, it's pretty easy. So I'm going to go to our site and take a look through some examples of materials, both at Plymouth and outside of Plymouth, to give you some ideas about what you can build. And hopefully that will spark your imagination a little bit more about what's possible. So I'm just going to go into my Pressbook. Let me go in here. And then after this, I'm going to show you the back end a little bit. So at the top here, I do link to the accessibility and universal design learning page on the Pressbooks EDU guide. I just find that really valuable information to read through. And I link to the Pressbooks EDU guide and the user guide. This is a great new Pressbook I found within the last week via Twitter. And it's on building technology tools that are good for the web. So just simple things you can do for optimizing documents, video files, images, and PDFs. I really like this Pressbook. I like the guidelines that this particular user has given to folks. So that's something I wanted to throw in here just because for me, that's really important. Whether I'm working on a website or a Pressbook or what have you, optimizing files is really important from the IT perspective. So in the classroom, the Rebus community has some great textbooks about making open textbooks with students and a guide to publishing open textbooks. I highly recommend you read those. Going down though, I just want to show you these 3 different sites. Oops, let me see, sorry, clicked on the wrong link, here it is. So the Word on College Reading and Writing is an introductory guide written by faculty for first-year college students. I'm just going to click through these, and you can get them from the Pressbook itself. So it's basically a collegiate level textbook full of information about reading and writing, and it's pretty in-depth. So that's one example I have. In addition to that, another one I like to show is the Essentials of Linguistics textbook. And what I love about this book is that the author integrates videos in particular in a really nice manner. So when we think about building a Pressbook, right, it's not necessarily just a book, depending on how people are accessing it. It's interactive. So she has some great quizzes and she has video files in most of the sections of her page and images, and just built a really nice book integrating multimedia. And last but not least, this is a Pressbook, Driving Educational Change. Let's get it open. There we go, we'll go there, that's fine. So this is a book that was written between faculty and students. So I like to show this Pressbook as an option for something that you might build with students. It's not as long, it's not as in-depth as the first 2 books I opened, but it was done in collaboration, say over a semester with a group of students. We're gonna go back. And for showing what else you can do, I think there are some great examples in our own Pressbooks catalog. So if you go to press.plymouth.edu and you scroll a little bit, there's a link to the catalog. The catalog is a public place where I can post materials with permission from faculty who have been working on materials within the Pressbook, or anyone who's been working on materials in the Pressbook system. So in here, I have an example of a course textbook by Kathy LeBlanc, which is creating games. I have a little quote from her about why she wrote this material. She wanted to create a textbook to support her face-to-face class, while another Pressbook user, or not Pressbook, but another online material she found is intended to be an entire online course. That said, I will make the materials that I use in my course freely available as I develop it. So that's one of her reasons for using this system. But this is really a classic textbook that she wrote. I'm just going to move this so I can see it. So you can see here. I don't like to get too much into the nitty-gritty of all these books because some of these you do have to spend some time on. So you can see it's a little bit, it's more of an in-depth course material. Kristen's done a nice thing where she posted her lecture notes on Pressbooks. So that's another way you could use the tool. So if I go into her tool, her Pressbook, I can just click here, and then each week she's got her lecture notes for her copyright class. and got images, links out, all of those fun things. So that's another different way you can look at using Pressbooks. I say, oops, sorry, bookmarks exploded. Let me stop sharing. Okay, now I'm back. And one faculty member in the nursing department made a digital bookshelf. So this is more links out to other open materials for nursing. So that would be more a curation, right? What can you find that's open that you want to share? Maybe it's better formatted in a Pressbook system, say, than your LMS in Moodle. But there's some various links to other materials. You can see here, it's from OpenText CA Clinical Skills. So that's another way that it's been used institutionally at Plymouth. And last but not least, I have Opening Contemporary Art by Sarah Parrish. Each semester, she has students work on this Pressbook as part of their sort of final week. So it's got content about contemporary art, sort of new and breaking information maybe you can find elsewhere. It's a little bit more in depth because each semester she's had students continually build and add on it. So this one, I say in one of the videos I recorded that's in my Pressbook, it's living and breathing. Of course it's not living and breathing, but it's ever changing. It's more like the seasons, right? So it's ever changing, and it keeps being judged, for lack of a better word, each semester, or added to as well. So that's just within our own institution that we find all of these different Pressbook materials. In addition to that, there's also some Pressbooks materials that were made at PSU prior to us even having the Pressbook system. So you can always go, and I'm sure some of these have floated around in faculty emails, to some of these other materials as well. So for the back end, and I'm going to get in there for just a little bit. And then hopefully, if anybody has access, I did send out a Sandbox account to a number of users who requested it. You are free and can use that Sandbox now or at any point throughout this. It's just a place for you to play, as sandboxes are meant to be, and to sort of follow along or do what you need to do to learn the system a little bit better. That will be available to you. If anybody does not have access to the Sandbox and wants access, please email me after this, elr1012@plymouth.edu, and I will get you signed up. So when you first go into the system, just to give you a little bit of a system level view, you see this. If you haven't signed in before, there'll be a sign in button in the upper right. Under this Learn More tab, that links to that open source document. It has some general information about Pressbooks. So you can click on that if you'd like. Scrolling down, here's that catalog I was talking about. And the sign up button will direct you to information on our knowledge base page about signing up. Back up here, so this would be, I'd have to click sign in if I had never signed in before, and it uses our single sign-on system, so it's integrated with that. If you've logged into My Plymouth, you'll likely just be able to get in. I'm gonna go ahead and click on My Books. And in here, I have my catalog of materials. So either by going to My Books up here, or scrolling through here, I'm not sure if this is relatively new or somewhat new feature. You have your own catalog page. So if you wanna publish anything that you've made into your catalog, you just click on this little button here, show in catalog, and then that'll show up in your own catalog, and you can share that link out with students, faculty, pretty much anybody if you wanna have your own specific catalog page, which I think is kind of a nice new-ish feature. And to go into my book, I'm going to go to Visit Admin, and that will bring me to the administrator panel of my Pressbook. The left-hand column is really where the magic happens in Pressbooks. So if I go to Organize here, that brings me to my organizational tab. When you first are set up with Pressbooks, you'll have three different portions. You'll have your front matter, your main body, and your back matter. And there will be a chapter 1 assigned already in there, and all of those will have a little bit of text in them. So you can either click on the buttons over here to the right or over on the left to add chapters, front matter or back matter. And just to take a look, if I click on my front matter here, this is what you see in terms of your editor. So for anybody that's used WordPress, it's built off a WordPress system. It's extremely familiar to you, most likely. You may see there's also, you can assign a front matter type, which will determine the order of the front matter. So you can do that if you would like. Revisions are really important in WordPress and other systems. If for some reason you need to go back in time, students gone in, made some crazy changes, you need to go back and see what happened there. You can go back and look at your previous revisions over there on the right. We've just got our standard text editor here. Not going to get too much in depth with that. And then as I scroll down, I have, on this, it says I've allowed comments, but I've disabled comments for the material. So I can't actually add or go through any comments in the back end. But you can enable comments, and that can be universal if you want to have one kind of discussion. But you could also use a tool like Hypothesis to be able to have conversations without having them in your Pressbook itself. And then you can also assign authors or owners even to these different Pressbook sections. There's different ownership in Pressbooks. I recommend going to those two guides, the Pressbooks for EDU guide or the Pressbooks guide, to go over those different roles. I can talk about that at the end if you want, but I'm not going to get too much into it. Pretty much administrator and editor, you're going to have a lot of power if you assign either of those roles. So I can assign this section to a specific owner if I had more than one, which I've done in the Sandbox Pressbook. And you can also change the authors for each section. So I have Jane Doe in here. If the front matter was written by Jane Doe, I can assign her to be an author in that front section. In addition to that, there's two copyright assignments that you can give. There's an overall copyright assignment, and then there's a per chapter copyright assignment. You don't have to select this if you've done an overall copyright assignment for your Pressbook, but you can actually go into each section and assign different copyrights as well. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, I'm going to go on from that because you kind of get a general idea of each of those sections by just looking at one. They all look very similar. Oh, there's one more thing. Where it says add part, I'll just talk about this very briefly. Add part will assign an additional section to your Pressbook. So you have your chapters, your front matter, and your back matter. Add part will assign another section to that Pressbook. So here is my book info. This is a very important space for your Pressbook. I don't see enough people going into this space and editing it the way I'd hoped they would. So I wanted to make sure to bring it up today. So you can change your title. You can add a short title, subtitle, authors. There's this contributor section here on the left and also create new contributor. So you can either go between them. For example, if I just click on contributors there, if I needed to add a new contributor, I put their name in, first name. This is my fiance's name, so that makes it easy, sweet and short. All right, so Taylor Hall is now added in. If I go back to my book info, now Taylor Hall shows up in my list, or I can just type his name in and he's been added. I just have to make sure to click save whenever I've made any changes. So there's publisher, publisher city. If you wanted to pay for an ISBN, that is possible. You could put your ISBN code in here. Cover image is really important. There is a way to generate a cover image for your Pressbook. Otherwise, the information right down here is really valuable. 1.1 to 1.15 aspect ratio and pixel ratio as well. The Pressbook system really likes JPEG files. So if you are designing your own cover, I tend to use InDesign to do so. But you can upload that as a JPEG file into your system as long as it fits the file size requirements. You can also choose a primary subject. This will actually show up in your metadata, which is on the front page of your Pressbook. And this is that general copyright license for the overall material. So when I go into Pressbooks, I like to make sure that, I've chosen the copyright that I think is the best for my material. The last thing I want to point out on this page is short description. That will also show up on the front page or sort of home page when you go to your Pressbook. So if you fill this out, that's a really good thing to have just to sort of give someone a little bit more context about what your material is about. As I said, we do have a few different themes available to you. They're here. So if you wanted to change the Pressbook theme, it's not quite like WordPress, right? We don't have an abundant amount of so many hundreds of thousands of themes. There's only a few, and they're really built for books and inspired by a number of different authors, as you can see. So this export Another important place, if you are going to make files available to the public on your homepage, this is one of two places you need to go to do that. So you have all of the PDF functions on the left, EPUB, MOBI. We have two new ones that we added. There are some restrictions about, not restrictions, but it's pretty much an open licensed thing that we're taking advantage of. So there's some information about that if you were to share particularly the print PDF or digital distribution PDF over email, you should credit the company that made that file type because we are taking advantage of it for free. I also really like to export Pressbooks XML and WordPress XML. There's a reason for that. Using Pressbooks, if somebody wants to copy and use your material or adapt it, they can do that if you've openly licensed your material, right? But easily integrate your Pressbook into another Pressbook system, you need the XML files. That will assure that somebody else can get your files and reuse your material. So if you're into sort of open licensing, Creative Commons, all of that, I highly recommend that you check off Pressbooks XML and WordPress XML for exporting. Once you've made your selections, you go ahead and export. If you've made any changes to your book recently, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to click delete and apply. And that will allow me to delete my old files. And then I'm going to re-export my files. So they're the most up-to-date files that I have of my material, and they're going to appear in my menu down there. The bigger your material, the more time this takes. And if you're trying to import other Pressbooks, we can run into some timeout issues, things like that. So you can see, just a few seconds later, I've got all my updated files. The cover generator, that generates an automated cover based on the information you fill out. So if you don't feel comfortable using something like InDesign to make a cover, this will make a cover for you. However, it does have a little watermark from the Print XML company, which makes our digital PDF files, just FYI. And those files will have a little watermark, but it's not really disruptive to the reading process, in my opinion. So you can fill out this information and make a cover. I'm not going to do it because last time I did it, it replaced my current cover, and I like my current cover. But you can do that, and it will just generate a basic text cover. That's really great to have in case you wanted to print your material, because they typically do ask for a cover page if you're printing a book. So this will be good for those kinds of things. Plugins, we have general plugins that we've added and some that I've researched and added. This just gives you a breakdown of what those are. Media is just like your WordPress media page. I pretty much just have my cover images in here, but if you wanted to share anything else small in your Pressbook, this is where you do that. If you're putting in video files, I typically use embed codes to embed videos or something large because the system really can't handle it. But for smaller things like images, and you have a Pressbook about how to optimize images for the web. So you'd go ahead and do that. Users. If you, as I was saying earlier, if you needed to add users or subtract users to your material, you have students coming in, they do have to request accounts through helpdesk@plymouth.edu. If you're an administrator on your book, you do have control over who your users are in your material. So you can actually subtract users after the semester ends. I don't have any users in my book, but with administrator control, that's basically where you'd have that power to change that information. Tools, the most important thing, actually, there's not too many important things on tools, so I'm going to skip that section. Settings, the most important thing here I really think is the sharing and privacy page. So if you'd like to activate comments, you can leave them here. It's automatically set to have comments not activated, but if you'd like to activate comments on your book or material, you can do that. You do have to opt in. Book visibility, on that very front page, I forget if I mentioned this or not, I don't think I did, in your organize area, your book when they are set up is set to public. You can also make a book private, which means only people you invite to the material can read it. And you can set passwords on your different sections of your material. And this will basically not allow people to view it from the web right off. So if something you're working on, you do sometimes want to make that material private. Again, it's set up to be public when I set a Pressbook up. That's just the way the system works. So if you want to make it private, there's two different ways to do that. Again, in organize or in private button here. The share latest export files is the other really important area here. If you want to be able to share your materials or those export files, EPUB, MOBI, PDF files, so that if we're talking about hybrid learning or any of those kinds of environments, somebody's not going to have computer access, you want to give them access to a PDF, you have to turn this on as well. So you want to make sure you turn on share exports and you go to that export tab and export your files, and then they'll be available on that home page of your material. Further down, this export, just click here. This doesn't have too much information you generally need to change, so I typically keep it. And below that, there's some specialized tools that we've added via extensions and plugins. So I'm not going to get too much into that. Same with TablePress. Everything under here is a plugin that we've added, which this allows you to build tables, H5P. I'm sure some of you have used it in Moodle. It's interactive content. You can also put it in your Pressbook. And Meta Slider is a basically slideshow, image slideshow you can build in to the Pressbook if you'd like, to make it more interactive. But you can also add images other ways. That's just one option. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. I think with that, I just have Q&A, and I know I speak really fast when I do these things, so there might be some questions out there floating around. I also have my availability, and this is my local cinema here in Concord, Red River Theaters, and they have this up on their marquee, just keep swimming from Finding Nemo. So I just wanted to put it up there to just keep swimming, and thank you for your attention thus far.
Erika, you're a dynamo, and I'm pretty sure that people who are seeing Pressbooks for the first time are probably sitting there like this. So it's an amazing technology, but please know, number one, it's like actually fairly simple interface and a little bit intuitive once you get going. But we don't expect that from that you're just like, oh, perfect. So we are prepared for more questions, and that's fine. We do have a couple of minutes here, so if anybody has questions, you can feel free to unmute your mic and just go ahead and ask Erika.
Yeah.
Erika, I have a question. So I'm wondering, I know you mentioned copyright issues and that there's a place to find the different options that you could kind of assign your Pressbook.
Yep.
I'm wondering about this as a tool for compiling like key readings that I use in different courses, like mixing that within like maybe some of my lecture notes or some other helpful links or activities that might be related, like as a way of organizing the course.
Yep.
Are there any issues around bringing like an article?
Yeah, I've talked with Kristen Wixon a little bit about this. She's your go-to person for these kinds of questions. And if you're linking out to that material or providing that, you know, and not saying it's your own, that's okay. But you can speak to her further about that if that's something you have some further concerns. But per our conversation, as long as you're providing the context of who the original author is and linking to them and providing them credit, then you should be okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
There's a difference in your copyright between stuff that you copy and paste into the Pressbook. So first of all, if you keep your Pressbook private, that's a different thing, right? Because that's just like a little thing, you might make it for you. And I think there's a way, Erika, could you set that so your students can view it? So that's kind of like more like a course management tool. So the thing about Pressbooks is that it has the potential and is generally used as a public facing book. So if you do that, public facing, you're fine to drop in any links you want, but you can't copy and paste and put that material in there unless you're following the rules of fair use. So that would mean just like smaller excerpts. So if you have like a big article, you could absolutely put the link as a way of organizing. But if you're going to make the Pressbook public, then you wouldn't be able to like copy and paste that whole article. And we can help you with that a little bit. It's one of the reasons a lot of people are turning to the open educational resources with the right license. So one thing you can do is you can use OER, copy and paste it, have it all in there. And for anything that's not open, we would just link out to the original sites. But we can help you design that anytime. That's a really good question.
Yeah. And as I said, as I showed, there's password protection as well. So if for some reason, you want to protect some of that data, you can protect it with something as simple as a password on your Pressbook so that only people with the password can access it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think I'm trying to look because as you may have noticed, we had a little error in the sched, but we have still 10 minutes technically in this session. So if anybody else has more questions, now is a great time.
And I have time as well. In my schedule, you can just pretty much shoot me an email if you need to meet. There's tomorrow anytime except from 3:30 to 4:30 and Friday anytime except from 1 to 2. And as you may have seen, it's for a limited time only this week.
Do you want to say more about that, Erika?
I am also furloughed, like many of the staff presenters we've seen today.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of point out that, well, there's a lot of things I want to point out, but I won't point them all out. I will just say that some of the technologies we depend on most, some of these folks are not going to be around. The collab can support it a little bit. But one great thing to do would be if you do want to maybe start a project, you're not totally sure, if you can use the next couple of days to confer with Erika and get that set up. And all these folks will be back too. And there's lots of us here who can help in the meantime, but it's a very rough time to be losing expertise in these particular areas. So yeah, and really thank you, Erika, because Erika's been working really hard on creating like digital versions of herself for when she goes on furlough, and it's above and beyond.
Yes, I forgot to say, in that Pressbook that's shared in the presentation that I built out, if you go to the catalog on press.plymouth.edu, it's there. On the third page, there are videos I recorded walking through all those step-by-step things I just said really fast today. So you can go through and watch those videos. Also, Pressbooks has a really good YouTube channel. So if my videos don't cut it for you, go ahead and look up the Pressbooks YouTube channel. It's really good.
And we're also in the collab pretty good friends with the Pressbooks team. So they are still kind of a young company. And so they love to actually work directly with creators. So if we run into problems, they help us out too. So thank you, Erika. I am so grateful. And that was an absolutely gorgeous presentation. Like I said, with Moodle, I thought I knew Pressbooks, but now I know a lot more. So thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. And anyone needs to reach me, you can find me via email until Friday.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording this session now.